7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I believe we are live with Micah McCurry Live, number 26 with Pastor Joe Brown. Now, I realize I put Joe Brown on everything. Do you prefer Joe or Joseph? I've got to ask.
Well, my mother would have preferred Joseph, but she's passed on, and so I think we're forgiven to use that. When I went to Bible college, everybody just started calling me Joe, and so everybody calls me, even people here at our church still call me Joe or Pastor Joe. So
sure. Yeah. So my mom actually loves the name Michael, but she's not a big fan. I'm sorry, all the Mikes out there. She's not a big fan of the name Mike or Mikey and things like that. And so she named me Micah, which is funny because anytime I talk on the phone, people always hear Mike. And so they always call me Mike, especially people that don't know me. So that's just how it goes. But she
loved the full name, but in college, whatever sticks. So that's the way it rolled.
That's how it goes. Well, Pastor Joe Brown, I appreciate it. For those that might not have any idea who you are at all, can you give us a short 2 minutes introduction to yourself?
Sure. So Joseph Brown, married to Charity Epley Brown. Some of you might have known the Epley family. We've been married for going on 11 years, 6 children, 2 boys, 4 girls, and they are Aaron, Hannah, Lydia, Abigail, Rachel, and Andrew. I think I got them all right. And I'm pastoring here where my dad started a church in Washington, Iowa, 1973. Pastor Larry Brown. Matter of fact, I'm in the office in his first office. And so it's just living the dream, being able to pastor here. Never thought that I would. Thought that God had different plans for my life, but he knows best. And so living the dream and just serving the Lord here in Washington, Iowa.
Amen. Now, talk to us, jumping right into it here, and we'll get, I guess, right into cut the chit-chat, and we'll get straight to the hard questions. What was it like taking over for your dad, who's a larger-than-life personality for sure, and I mean, just his persona, but stepping in for a guy who's been there, done that, and kind of taking, and especially when people, remember you as the young kid around church. What was that like?
Sure. Well, obviously it's an honor to take over for my dad. My dad is still my hero, the greatest Christian that I've ever known, the most consistent Christian, true blue, and a Bible scholar, but so appreciated the fact that even though, there's no Bible question that he couldn't answer. You could take him to anywhere in the Bible and he could tell you, matter of fact, without even the Bible, you could say, talk to us about Exodus chapter 21, and he would tell you exactly what was there. But yet he focused on preaching, and in his preaching, he really taught the people here. So the reason why I say that is because I'm going somewhere. Mm-hmm. I guess the biggest thing, and then I can kind of back up, and we do have time to kind of
go ahead. All the time in the world.
Conversations. Okay.
I won't tell your wife, but we have all the time in the world.
Perfect. All right. So where I was going with that is a lot of people ask, what's the toughest thing about pastoring or the biggest burden in those beginning years? And my answer always kind of shocked those people that were asking. And I said it was the preaching. Because my dad had just such a unique way here in feeding his people that he was a preacher and a preacher's preacher. He could just preach the house down. But when you walked away, you knew something about the text. You knew what you believed. In other words, a lot of people think that hard preaching is, unfortunately, in this day and age, it's just fluff. But I'm telling you, these preachers and the preachers that he pointed us to, those old time preachers, I tell you what, you just go back and listen to a Harold B. Seitler message, or obviously we could list a bunch of them here. The doctrine but they were preaching, and so that was tough for me because he was such a natural, and somehow, some way, I thought when it was thrown to me that somehow I had to match that. And great was the day when I just gave up and let God do what he wanted to do through me, and not worry about any of that. So that's kind of a I guess a side note along with the question that you asked. But
sure.
Do you want me? I can just basically kind of give you a little bit of the overview of how it became.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So obviously I grew up here. My dad and my mom helped organize the church with 4 men and their wives. And just was a unique and amazing story how God brought them all together. My dad was working for Brother Bobby Robertson as his first assistant pastor.
Wow.
And of course that's over 45 years ago. Anyway, so I grew up here, me and my 5 sisters and 1 brother, and loved being a pastor's kid and just the greatest thing in all of the world. But I really had a heart for music, and I thought that I would really focus in music. And then, of course, my wife's family, her brothers came here, and they were big into music, and we sang together and recorded at Faith Music and just really enjoyed that. But God put in a desire in my heart to work here for my dad, doing music, leading, singing. I was serving, even in high school, leading like in the Bible class and things like that. And I went to a 3-day song leading course, and just, it was unique. I didn't know that God was preparing me for later on in life. I just had that desire. I remember getting the North Valley, what do they call it? Singing Live, those first CDs where they had the
the singing church
singing church.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
My brother and my sisters thought it was so weird because they would come by my room and the choir would just be blasting out, and they'd open the door. I'd be in there leading, singing. I mean, I love that. And that was way early on. Having no idea, I still lead the choir here to this day and love it and all of that. But anyways, that's it's another story for another time. But so in the 11th grade, God called me to preach, and I just basically just obviously let go and said, okay, God, if you want me to preach, I'll do that. Went off to OBC for a year, loved it, thanked God for it. Baptist boot camp, I called it. I loved it. Matter of fact, that's where I met Caleb the first time. And so again, God does all of those things, And then Dad offered me a job here in the summer. So I transferred to Howells Anderson, and I drove home on the weekend. So I had a really unique college. I don't necessarily always advise it, for others, but that's what I did. I drove home on the weekends, not knowing that I would be pastor one day. So I went on staff here in May of 2004. Now, it was technically part-time, even though I worked full-time.
Sure.
It was part-time because every fall semester and spring, I would be in Bible college, and then I'd drive home on the weekends and do youth and music. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So I did that and loved it. So this is what the 14th or 15th year of being on. This is my job. I've been on staff here at Marion Avenue. Well, in 2010, my mom passed away, and it was just a shocking thing. And a year later, my dad drove me to the park, and we're sitting there. I knew something was up, and he said, "Son, I'm done. God has moved my heart from pastoring, and I'm going into full-time evangelism." And of course, that rocked my world a little bit because I thought, well, I'm going to probably lose a job here. Some new guy's going to come in. And he said, "And son, I don't advise you to pastor here." I said, "I've never thought about it." And I said, "But why would you say that?" He just said, he said, being an assistant pastor is the gravy train, which is kind of offensive to assistant pastors. It is, absolutely. And I didn't agree, and I don't know that I still yet agree. Sorry, Dad, but I wouldn't call it the gravy train. But he just said, you're on staff here. Why, and so anyways, to make a long story short, I said, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm enjoying being the second man. I have a heart in that. I was preaching in a bus teen church, and I enjoyed that, but that was enough for me. As far as preaching and study. And I didn't really do any counseling or funerals and weddings,
sure.
And, just the pastoral building programs or whatever. I didn't do any of that. But God was preparing me, and I didn't know it. He was, and my dad was traveling more and more, and I was doing stuff. We started a youth conference here, Our Time Youth Conference. And I was doing that before I was even married. And God was preparing me for administration and pastoral heart and things. So anyways, throughout that process, I won't go into all the details of it. The men of the church were just unanimous in the fact that they wanted to approach me. Well, I had already said no, and my dad said, "Don't approach him. He's my son," which God was doing that because he was pushing against it. Whereas in some cases, a father could be setting it up. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
The church.
Sure.
And he was saying,
Absolutely.
"Nah, I don't know. He's still young or whatever," and all of that. Well, throughout that process, God began to work in my heart, and I began to desire it. And so my dad and I had a conversation, and God showed that to my dad, which he wasn't going to stand in the way anyway. Then my dad switched and was like, wow, this God has been doing this from day one. So in July 17th of 2011, I was voted in as pastor. So this July will be 8 years. It seems like yesterday. It's been a dream, and greatest church in the world. And I don't just say that, I really mean it. I grew up with them. Now, this is embarrassing, and I don't know if I should say this or not. I have to think about it for a second. But many of the ladies in the church that are a little bit older, they babysat me and changed my diaper in the nursery. So, and now I'm pastoring them. So it is,
right.
It's that dynamic a little bit. That
sure.
It's, and there are some people, and I feel loved and respected and all of that. But I love the fact there are still some people in that older generation that will call me Joe. And I love that. I have
sure.
no problem with that. you know, they saw me running around the church as a little kid, you know, kicking them in the shins or whatever, you know.
Right,
And so,
right.
hey, Joe, pray for me. I got, you know, whatever.
Right.
And it's we're a unique church. It's a great, in other words, they know that I didn't ask for this. They asked for it. And that has bonded us together
Sure.
in such a way that only God could have done. And by the way, backing up, because you said in your email, long form conversations. So
yes, please.
I'm taking that literally.
Absolutely.
So basically, all of that preparation of driving home from college, all of that, I had no idea was just training me for the ministry here. Whereas if I would have not driven home on the weekend, I may have taken another, not taken another church, but gone and worked in some other environment.
Right.
Whereas God kept me here.
Right.
So,
well, it's amazing how God works that out.
Tell me, are you're assistant pastor there at First Baptist, right?
Yes. Under Pastor Joe Grimaldi. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep. And
I love Brother Grimaldi. Tell him I said hello.
I will.
I do have a funny story sometime if we ever get to it about when he pastored in Philadelphia. But anyway, we'll talk about that in
Pittsburgh area,
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the great things about this. It's very free flowing and everything. So I think we just need to hear that story since you brought it up. Everyone's just going to be waiting.
I got a little bit of my dad in me. Well, it's good to be under the spout where the glory comes out, my brother. Amnon had a friend, so I can just it wasn't really an embarrassing story, but it was a blessing. I flew to basketball. I had somehow a free ticket. I don't know how it came about, but I flew to basketball camp at Mount Salem Revival Grounds.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, and I was terrible at basketball. My brother was the basketball player, so I don't even know why I went, but I did. Anyways, so I went to basketball camp way back in the day. I mean, I was young. And it was the first time I'd ever flown by myself, and my mom and my dad were, it was like a big deal and everything. And on the way home, my flight got canceled overnight, and I'm in that whatever airport. What did you say, Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Pittsburgh must be Pittsburgh Airport.
Big airport. For some reason, I had a layover there getting into West Virginia, and it was an overnight. And so I was just gonna have to go get a hotel, and I'm like 14. So my parents are going crazy. So my dad calls up Brother Grimaldi. I got a boy in the airport, So anyways, he came over and picked me up. I stayed at their house. Then we went soul-winning the next morning. So it isn't embarrassing story necessarily, but it was a blessing because he just pushed everything aside, and I spent the night at their house. And I mean, this is 20 years ago or more. So it was just unique. Every time I think of Brother Grimaldi, I think about that.
Very cool. Now I've got to ask, because you did it and you did a good one. Who has, and a risk of offending, who has the best Larry Brown impersonation that you've ever heard? Because that was a good one.
Caleb Garraway try it?
Okay.
Did he try it?
No, he did not.
Oh,
I
thought that's what you were asking. Who has the best?
Okay. No. Sorry, guys. In your opinion, who has the best impersonation of your dad?
Don Knotts, Barney Fife. Have you ever? You got to compare, and that's respectful. Okay. Again, my dad is my hero. He might watch this, but I tell him, if you ever watch Don Knotts, Barney Fife on the Andy Griffith Show, you will see my dad's preaching. You have to think of it that way. No, I don't know. For sake of not, bragging, but I think I can do, and I've done it a few times in the pulpit. And if I get in the mode, I can, I've heard some of his messages many times, like Amnon had a friend or mush the bag or whatever. And that's the way he says it. As a matter of fact, today at 2:00, I did a funeral out at Elm Grove Cemetery here in town. And the funeral director, who's just, a secular lady here in our town, came up to me and she said, "Hey, I have a funny story to tell you about your dad." And we really are getting in the weeds now, but anyways, I'm having a good time. So he said, "I have a funny story to tell you about your dad." And of course this lady does not go to our church, does not, and anything like that. And I said, "Okay, great. What, what story?" And she's like, he was given, and she said, "I love to listen to his funerals." And again, that's kind of something neat being, in a ministry like this. There's those connections from years ago and all of that. And people always ask me about my dad and how he's doing and all of that. So anyways, she said, "I was standing in the back, and I always loved it because he was so sincere," which is, by the way, a testimony because she's listening to the gospel and everything else. And she said he was up there just teaching on and on, or talking on about the wheel, WHEEL, the wheel of God. And she's like, "I didn't know that it talked about wheels in the Bible." And he went on and on and on. And so finally, and she told me this today, she said, and this is back in the day that she's remembering. And she said, finally afterwards, she said, "I was so curious because I wanted to learn about the wheel of God." And I already knew because I know my dad's accent. And so she's like, I went up to him afterwards and said, what are these wheels in the Bible? And he said, the wheel of God, ma'am, the wheel of God. And she's like, what wheel? And W-I-L-L, the will of God. And that's like, funny. Honestly, our church has all these little sayings that my dad would, because he had that.
Right.
He grew up in the deep South, and had all of that. So to answer your question, I can take off on him pretty good, but I got to be in the, mode.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so
I think.
Did I answer your question though about, how has it been pastoring?
Absolutely.
My dad was phenomenal in the transition.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I mean, to the point where I'm like, Dad, like help, like, because people who he loved and counseled and still loves to this day, they would call him up and, just ask about something. And he would call me and say, hey, so-and-so called me. Is it okay if I talk to him? I'm like, Dad, you started this church and pastored here 40 years. What are you talking about?
Sure.
But he was just so good at that and pointing people to me and all of that. And I was like, and now he moved to North Carolina to help take care of his mom. He moved back here for the sole purpose. He said, I hate the winters, but he said, I just love our church and I love what God's doing here, which of course is a great encouragement to me. And he visits hospitals. He's done 2 funerals in the past 2 weeks, helped, but we've done them together. So anyways, does that answer your question?
Yeah. And that's a great point. And I know God works in different ways for different folks, different ministries and things, but it was very, very interesting. You brought up that he wasn't trying to push this. God kind of led to it. And because
he was afraid
of that,
as his son. And I think he was afraid that he wouldn't be he wanted to disconnect and let a new man, a new vision. And he felt like, because him and I were so close and still are, that is this going to be Pastor 2.0? And you've seen that, no doubt. And it just happens.
Right.
And he didn't want that. But it hasn't happened. I mean, he just pushed me out of the nest and said, look, okay, if they call you, you're going to pastor it.
Right.
And God's worked in that.
Well, and you see it sometimes, not even on the nepotism, father-son thing, but where the assistant or the next guy is trying too hard to be who the previous person was.
Right.
And
in those first few months, it was scary. Like, these people have been fed, I mean, the meat of God. I'm telling you, I mean, he went through on Wednesday nights back when I was probably preteen, did a whole series through Daniel and Revelation. But it wasn't dry and okay, we're going to go verse by verse, all this dry expository.
Right.
No, it was true, like preaching I mean, and I thought, he could, in prophecy, he had this huge chart that he learned back. He went to Piedmont Bible College way back, because he's a little bit older. They went 7 years without having kids. So all of us, he was an older dad and mom, if you know what I mean. So he went back in, let's see, it would be the early 60s.
Okay.
So, and he just got a solid foundation, all of that. But that was a huge thing to me. I was like, I can't do it. And then just not long into it, God just said, you know what? You walk with God. If you are spirit filled, he would always say, and I forget who it was, if it was Jack Hiles or somebody, I can't remember. He would tell me, and he would always quote it to me, my dad, if God's in it, it'll work. If God's in it, it'll work. And he used to say that. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I mean, of course, if God's in it. But then I got it. And just the discipline of prayer and like, if God is in it, it will work. Forget, people sitting there who've been in our church 40 years fed on that. And I come up with my weak little anemic message. As long as God is in it, who cares? And that's what we've seen happen here.
Amen. Now, to backtrack a little bit, because you touched on it, the love for music that you have, was that something that you feel like God kind of gave to you, or is it something that was in the home, or where did that kind of come? The reason I bring that up is because I was in a song leading seminar type thing. It was just like I think it was out at North Valley. There were pastors conference out there a while ago.
We might have even, if it was been several, I was out, I did that one there too during the conference. Yeah.
It could have been. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, we might have been the same one, but somebody asked the question.
Are we the same age?
I think I'm a little bit younger. I'm about to turn 27.
Okay, I'm 35, but I thought we were the same age.
So I think the beard makes me look a little bit the older Arab man thing going on, Jewish first. Anyway, they asked the question: how many of you just wanted to be a song leader, or were forced into it because of the needs of your church? And the pastor said, "Hey, you're leading singing this Sunday," and like 19 out of 20 people said, I was forced into it. I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I raised my hand and said, I love it. I
did too. And I rarely meet people like you.
Right.
I absolutely love it.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think I meet a lot of people
singing at your church.
I do. And
you enjoy it, don't you?
Right. It's one of my favorite things.
Pick out those songs. Oh man.
Right.
I love it.
And so sometimes I don't understand. I know a lot of people that enjoy singing, but I don't know if it's the being in front of people or whatever the case may be. And it's not, I mean, you get to facilitate this awesome thing.
Yes.
I don't understand sometimes the disconnect of why. So go ahead.
I don't know the disconnect why. I don't know, but I will tell you this: for anybody watching, and I don't have any idea who's watching, but for anybody watching that is a song leader or anything else, if they understand the value of congregational music now, even when I got into it, it was not degraded. Now you have these soft worship bands; they're all standing up there and they're taking away the leadership because nobody got it. Nobody understood that. Just like one pastor gets up and preaches and brings people, preaching demands a verdict. Well, I think song leading demands a verdict. Yeah. It does. Meaning you're bringing them. We have got to sing. And so you're pouring your heart and your spirit into Wonderful Grace of Jesus, or It Is Well With My Soul. And it still gives me chills just to think about. And, God has opened some little doors along the way. Like, for instance, I went to Africa where Jerry Wyatt and Rachel, that's my sister Rachel. Yeah. And my favorite memory of leading singing, and there was a college chapel back in the day in my alma mater that we led, and I led It Is Well a cappella, and it was just so much fun. But anyways, but my most the favorite time was when I was in Africa, and he said they sing How Great Thou Art, but they sing it in Swahili. I said, well, I can't do that, but why don't we let me lead it instead of sing? We were going to do a special or something, I can't remember. And it was packed out there, all of these village people, just everybody there. And they, of course, knew How Great They Are. And I led it in English and they sang it in Swahili. And I'm telling you, I just about became a Pentecostal. I mean, if I could have spoken in tongues, I just about would have. It was just, and there's something about it. And people that just get up, in the week noodle, it's killing our kids. That's why they're going to these worship bands, is because where's the guy who lights himself on fire? And by the way, my dad would tell me, if you're going to lead them, I mean, God loves music and created that avenue. Get alone with God and beg the power of God just to go lead, and I hate the dead, dry, whatever. So it is unique. And I'm glad to hear that from you.
Sure. I was listening back to,
my heart, I guess.
Yeah, I was listening. And speaking of some of the old preachers, I just looked up, I subscribed to the newer podcast. It's called Preach the Bible, I think, by Preach the Bible Classics. North Valley put it out.
Oh, really?
A brand new podcast. Like Guaranteed Victory in Jesus by Oliver B. Green is their latest one they just posted. So some really good. And so you have those old Harold Seidler and
that has helped
Oliver
me
Green.
More.
All
the
that.
Grace of God by Harold B. Seidler.
Some good stuff.
The Mephibosheth story and all of that. I'm telling you, that has lit my fire. Lester Roloff, all of those guys.
Right. I was listening to, I think, on their podcast, where's it at here? The preaching North Valley Baptist Church preaching podcast is their actual one that they put out. Brother Burcham did a great job. Craig Burcham, if you know him out there. Anyway, but I went back and listened to Brother Hudson's message, Tony Hudson, from their pastors conference just a little while ago. And I can't remember if it was We Need Elijah to Stand Up or what was the other one? Anyway, it's escaping me.
I don't know. I saw clips of it, but I didn't get to see it.
He said something about the fact someone had just sung, did a great job. I mean, God was all over it. And he said something about God hates dead music just as much as he hates the show, the worship, that type of stuff. And we lose track of that. We swing so far the other way with this just dead dry that we lose sight. And so I appreciate a kindred spirit on the music side of it. On that, you had a lot of opportunities to sing and all those different types of things. And now pastoring, what are some things, because, coming from a person that just loves music, what are some things that you're doing or that your dad did, and being the longtime music director there, to grow the music of the church through the young people, just in general, to make a culture? Because a great way to tell the temperature of a youth group is how well they sing. And what are some things that you feel like you're doing on purpose to further that end? Sure.
Obviously, anything that you platform and anything that you promote and talk about and enjoy, was it Dr. Lee Robertson that says everything rises and falls on leadership? So really the best answer to your question is this. the pastor of the church and the leaders like yourself, like
Sure.
myself, we have got, even if they don't know music, see, we've done, I think, and again, I don't want to be critical at all, but I think
Sure.
sometimes in our church we've done a disservice that it's relegated to these music guys like you.
Mm-hmm.
And the pastor is always saying, I don't know about music. I can't sing anything. And again, I'm not alluding
Sure.
to anybody. I'm not thinking of any
Absolutely.
one person, but I don't know about it. I mean, look at North Valley, for instance. We talked about them a moment ago.
Yeah.
Watch Pastor Trevor. He loves it. And
Right.
so every time you go into music, you have to love it. You've got to sing. You don't make notes during the, I'll tell the guys on the platform, you know, sometimes they'll send out a text to turn the air condition up and down, or the mic's squealing or whatever.
Right.
But man, if we're doing choir, if we're doing congregational music, you throw the hand in the air. If that's your personality, if God so
Sure.
leads, you know, it is well, my chains are all gone, whatever that verse is in, is nailed to the cross and I bear it no more. It is well with my soul. You know, you have to get into it. And I think my dad did that. My dad had a songbook, matter of fact, it's in here. And he had chicken scratch, his handwriting in the back of all these songs that he went through and pulled out. As a matter of fact,
go ahead, take your time.
Quick enough. I would love to show you the list that I've followed the same thing, much of those songs and then songs that I like right out of the new North Valley Songbook.
Yeah.
And they're just quick go-to songs. And then I have tabs. So in there, for instance, like New Grace, all of grace is my story. So we'll sing Wonderful Grace of Jesus. And then I'll step up and sing. And I don't lead the congregation anymore, though I love it. We have a guy, Abe Kane, who does a phenomenal job. But I've held on to the choir. I've led the choir for like 12 years now, and I just love it. Even though it's tough on a Sunday afternoon, 5 o'clock choir practice when you're preaching that night. But anyways, that's helped too. But if you can get your pastor, and I don't mean yours specifically, but you know, if you can get your pastor involved in the music, that's going to do more for your teenagers, more for your young people. If you'll just, you know, have that conversation to say, man, when we're singing these songs, get into it. And again, we do. Going back a little bit, I preach a message on music, and I have a PowerPoint and all of this goes with it and everything. And just, I mean, it's a brutal. I mean, it's calling it all out. I mean, it's one of those like pucker and duck because here comes. I mean, I show music from inside the ranks and everything, but not. You know, I mean, it's clearly defined. I'm not nitpicking, right? But in that, the first, and I kind of am setting up the young people when I preach this, but the first, 5 minutes of the message, I start talking about how young people do not have enough music. And then I say good music. When I get in the car, I mean, there's no music. Why? Because most likely it's something bad that they can't play, or it's just 24/7 in my house. If you went to my house right now, matter of fact, I ran home for lunch, and at lunch it was Frank Panosian, I think is his name, from he's from Bob Jones University from way back in the day, and the Garlocks, whatever. They have this scripture CD where there's beautiful music playing and they're quoting scripture. So that's out the house. There's, North Valley, whether it be the KNVBC stuff, faith music stuff, good quality music playing. So we don't have enough music. So to answer your question, how do you get people involved? You love it. You sing it. You make much of the congregational singing. Enough with this. Okay, that's the second song slot. That's the third song slot. Sing a couple. And of course you got to do what your pastor wants you to do, but sing Victory in Jesus, and then go into, and I owe it all to you, Lord, and then get the young people to sing. Part two to that answer would be my dad, Jack Terrell, who's passed on now, was the choir director when I was in the choir back in the day. And Dad sent him to Gospel Light Baptist Church in Walkertown, North Carolina, to just simply listen to the Gospel Light Choir. And if you come here today, you're going to hear a heavy alto. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's that Southern style, Jesus spoke to me one day, praise his holy name. It's that Stamps Baxter. Does that make sense? Old school.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, and again, I'm just kind of shotgun here.
No, please.
The bullet spread, but have a mixture. Some guys are like, nope, I don't like any guitar. I don't like any bluegrass sound. And I'm not for bluegrass in and of itself. I only want this high-end, high-class Bob Jones only. Right? Majesty music type, right? And I love, we sing Ron Hamilton songs, love it.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not talking about biblical or unbiblical. I'm talking about style of music. So we will have, and you may not know the difference, but when I say this, if you do, you'll know what I'm talking about. We will have Caleb and Katie Garraway sing the first special.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard their music. Beautiful music. Love it. Of course, they're from here. The second special is the Epley family. He's still on the throne, so what could be wrong? Miss Peter. Do you know the Epleys?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Just pounding out the piano. I mean, the piano's shaking, or they're singing, I can't go into I can't even remember all the songs, but those, the Epley Sugar Grove singers, And so that's helped our church because we will sing Bow the Knee in choir, and then we'll turn and in the same service sing I'm on the winning side. Well, I am on with the choir, and they love it. And it gives a nice, and that was what my dad did. And obviously it's in my spiritual DNA or whatever. And so that's a long answer, but I think just getting involved, that's the on purpose stuff, is having young people sing, even when they sound bad, but working with them. My wife does all of that. She does a phenomenal job and has a lot of people that do a great job helping them. But having the pastor and the staff sing, if there is a culture on the platform, for instance, where our guys get probably annoyed before we go out the door, 52 weeks a year. I say, now, what's the opening song? And Abe Kane, our song director, will tell me, I'll hail the power. I'm like, I love it. All that, that second verse, I can't remember it now. I'm the worst at remembering words, but let every tribe, I love that. Mm-hmm. And then I will say, now, guys, think about the song. I say that every single service. And I think what happens is we just do church far too often. And it's like, bringing in the sheaves, we shall come rejoicing. And our visitors are like, whatever,
Right. Yeah. It's, we do it because that's what we've done. That's just like, that's just, we got to do it. And man, I love
to all of us, but we have to preach on purpose.
Right.
So why let anything, announcements, I used to ramble with announcements, as you can tell. We can talk, but it needs to be on purpose and exciting. And, I think far too often we're afraid of being professional. And I think professionalism or formality has killed our churches. All of these, new idea stuff is so trying to over polish everything.
Right.
You get with God, you organize your service. I think we ought to know how long our service ought to be and everything else. But then get in there, and you know what? We don't have to worry if I sing an extra verse, what is our visitor,
Right.
And I know I'm really rambling now, but church is for saved people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
and
true.
This is a fundamental thing that our generation is getting wrong. If you look at all these, church in the whatever, church in the hills, church on the rock, church in the this, church in the that,
right,
or whatever they are, the river, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You ask them, and again, I know we're kind of segueing here, but
please go ahead, man.
If you ask them, their number one thing is they're like, well, we just want to reach the lost. Now hold on, and you can disagree with this. That's fine.
No.
Wait a minute. Church is for saved people.
Mm-hmm. The
saved people are supposed to be trained, discipled, all of that, to go win the lost. Yes, we want to bring them in, and we have lost people we had 81 visitors in church on Sunday. Now, 41 of those were bus visitors, like bus kids, and 40 were driving. We started our spring program. Probably a majority of those were lost. But wait a minute. If we make all our focus on just these lost people, then guess what? You don't need soul winning programs, because that's what Sunday morning's for.
Right.
And that's what's happening. Obviously, you see that. But that's what's happening is these guys are like, they want all the service to be like, well, these people, and they'll be like, no, here's a big church word, on a Sunday. Well, I thought all our words supposed to be church words, Right. I'm going to talk about sanctification this morning. And normally we wouldn't use a church word like that, but church is for saved people. And if you have that foundation in your music and everything else, that's why they like the songs, even the church songs that more have that feel of like, it's blended.
Right.
No, bring the people to the standard. Don't bring the standard to the people. And I've heard people say, well, some lost neighbor, your banker, you've invited him for spring program and he comes in and you're singing, I heard an old story. It's for saved people. Bring him there. So he says, this is different.
Right.
Anyways, I'm sorry. We're talking music, but
No, you're exactly. They fit together so well because, and Pastor Grimaldi has trumpeted this for years and all the way back because he's seen it. I mean, and that's one of the things I appreciate. Well, and
Sure.
it's so funny. So many things you mentioned. He loves me. He loves leading singing, and every once in a while,
that's good.
Because piano player situation, things like that. I've actually dabbled a little bit playing on Wednesday nights,
cool.
just the tiniest bit. I don't really
Did you
play
take
piano.
lessons?
Some as a kid, and so I don't really play by ear.
You play
so
piano, you lead singing, you probably preach some when
it's some
wow.
yeah.
What do you not do?
Paquito, preach well, sing well, play piano well. But anyway,
that's the second men. That's what we do. We do it
exactly. Jack of all trades, master of none. Yes. But I love the fact that he feels the music too. He enjoys it. He's said so many times, as the music goes, then the scriptures go, then the standards go, and they just follow each other. And so often the music is the precursor. That's the first one. And so you're exactly
dead
right.
Churches and dead music is the reason. Now, I mean, we're not to blame, but the reason why a lot of these guys have gone on with all their worship war stuff is because it was dead. But let me tell you something. You can sing "It Is Well With My Soul" and be. It doesn't have to move your body. It will move your soul. And you can. I'm telling you, blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a forte! I mean,
speaking of, I got to lead singing at a Common Ground Baptist camp. Jim Crone, you might know who he is.
Sounds familiar.
He runs a camp. He runs a camp in Butler, Pennsylvania. He's pastor in New York, and he asked me to lead singing this past year, and I will again this year.
That's awesome.
So 250 juniors, and we sing some bus type songs, camp type songs. But the evening services, we go nuts. We sang back to back, "Blessed Assurance" and "It Is Well" with the keys on every verse. And these juniors are just
they love
nuts.
They love it.
But we think, we've got to sing these choruses and I'm not against walk the Bible way. Absolutely, we sing that too. But man, right before the service, the last song to be "It Is Well," and these, my sin, oh the bliss you already mentioned, and Lord haste the day. That's like, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It was so much fun, but we've discarded all that. We don't need any of that, and we need all this manufactured thing. No, absolutely not.
If somebody gets on their knees and spirit filled in the music world and in any world, God's gonna get in it.
Absolutely,
and it's something that has to be worked on. I mean, we've gone through times and said, okay, let's sit back down and let's go look at our opening congregational songs, and let's let's not sing the same thing over. You have to, whatever, it's like anything, you got to do it on purpose.
Right. And I would highly recommend for guys that even know what right looks like, because there are a lot of churches, they haven't seen it that happen, have someone like, the Epleys come in or go visit North Valley.
That's what I was saying
Marion
about
Avenue.
Gospel Light. That's what my dad did to me, and I didn't finish the thought.
Exactly.
I rambled on.
No, you're exactly right.
But he then, when I realized I was going to be music director here, I went out to North Valley, and I remember, matter of fact, Sunday night we sang "Well Done, My Child" here. I don't know if you've ever heard that with the orchestra.
Yeah.
But the first time I walked in North Valley, it was a Sunday night before their conference started. And this is like back in the day, like 1998, 2000. I was still in high school.
Were they in the new building or the old building? At that time?
They were still in the old building, yeah. Okay. And they sang "Well Done, My Child," and it was just like, I mean, I'm a teenager and wanted just to stand and shout, So if it's done right, and too, I think we have to do quality music,
right.
And so everybody in our circle, unfortunately, sometimes, and they just want to go in because their grandma paid for them they sang a special one time in church. That doesn't necessarily help us, but it doesn't have to have all the rock and roll.
Yep, absolutely, and you're exactly right. The spirit. I remember back in my teenage years, there was an older guy. He's since passed on. That he would sing like "Ship Ahoy" and some of those old songs.
Ray Hart,
with his high tenor,
in your church.
Right? He was this high tenor voice and all that. And the timing was always a little bit off.
Sure.
And he hit the notes. But looking back, whenever he got up as a teenager, I was like, oh, here we go again. Yeah. But as I got a little bit older, I was like, this guy's lived it.
Yeah,
he has kids on the mission field. And he's singing from the heart, and I was ashamed of myself for thinking, as a 14-year-old, here we go again. But man, it was a blessing. It was,
Sure.
it was great. So obviously we could commiserate about music for a long time, which I'm enjoying it.
Sure.
But so taking over for your dad, and you have our time and the live Christmas production, all these different things. How much of those were from your heart, or things your dad pushed, or other folks? Those big
events,
productions, if you want to call it, right? Where did a lot of those come from?
Sure. My dad would tell you, if you ask him advice about starting a church or whatever, he said, just go big. Not for production's sake, but
sure.
A lot of people would tell you why you couldn't do something. He just said, look, we're going to have a big day. We're going to have a carnival, which, is the, setting up inflatables or whatever back in the early days. So he just kind of innovated in that way back in the day. And let's just do this, obviously all within the bounds of glorifying God first and foremost. So he started the live animal Christmas play. And that's really, unless you've ever been here or seen much other than just a few clips, it is who our church is. God has just done amazing things through that. And so I just carried that on, and a lot of the big events and big days that we do here at our church, I just carried them on. The Our Time Youth Conference was something that God laid upon my heart and my brother-in-law, Jerry Wyatt, single young men. We were standing out in the gravel lot, and I said, man, I'm just so burdened. And, I was 24 at the time. So I was, young and 23 probably, and single and just fresh out of Bible college. And I said, all these guys are trying to do these youth conferences, trying to provoke people to, and I said, we ought to do something just ourselves. And so that's what it was born out of. And God has just blessed that. We have it coming up May 2nd and 3rd, by the way, if you know of anybody that wants to come.
Very nice.
And I'm very excited about the theme. And by the way, I haven't told anybody who the speakers are, so I can announce that tonight if you want me to. If anybody's
Feel
watching.
free. Absolutely.
So,
go ahead.
Anyways, but I'll come back to that in a moment.
Sure.
But it just took that. And then, the Our Time thing, God just has blessed that in churches. There's not much here in the Midwest by way of a conference. And, we don't promote a Bible college or anything else. I mean, we used to have this table set up, but I just stopped doing that. So I think, most of these big youth conferences, there's a college connected, and people have their own opinions about
it's more of a funnel thing.
They know, okay, if you go to that, you're going to go to that college. Whereas here, and we've just focused on strong preaching, the music, the opening. They'll ask me, Abe will ask me, what do we want for the opening car? And every year it's got to be all hail the power of Jesus' name, all of those instead of the typical teen, I'm in right out, right, whatever.
Right.
So to answer your question, just took the foundation and built upon it. I had a pastor friend of mine, matter of fact, an old youth pastor, Pastor Brian Andrews, said, when you take over, he was counseling me back in those days. He said, don't say you're going to change anything. Just say you're going to build upon it. And so that's been valuable advice. I've tried to never use the word change. We've built upon the service times, made them better, moved the, it was like 7:00 Sunday night service. Now it's 6:00, and things like that. But to answer your question, we took the Christmas play and just said, look, God is already using it. Let's just build upon it. We'll have 9 showings this year. And last year we had right at 5,000 visitors. We've had, it's just unbelievable what God has done. And we bought 2 semis and full of equipment. We go to Chicago, we go, 8 hours away and rent all this lighting. And it's just crazy. And still the people are lined up. We shut the street down this year. People are lined up all the way up to the square, and we have to shut the door and turn them away.
Wow.
Now what big day? And I don't mean comparison. I'm just saying it's just crazy. So I would be nuts not to just build upon what God has done. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And I love that. And that's worth the price of admission to this podcast thought right here. That don't change, just build upon it. That's just smart.
Yeah.
It's perception is reality for a lot of folks.
If you say change, it means, well, somehow what they did for 35 years was not good. And not only that, meddle not with them given to change. We ought to be builders, not changers. People say, well, I know we're not supposed to like change, but I'm going to change ministry. You ought to build upon it. Whatever.
Well, I'm thinking of some illustration. Don't remove not the ancient landmarks. No, we're gonna make a bigger and just
You're
even
exactly
more.
Right. Do more of it. Make
do
it
not
more
pass. Right.
And the young people and the young couples will come. Let me tell you something.
Right.
They want hard preaching. They want truth. That we live in a generation of soft. And I'm telling you what, it's already happening. There was a report out by one of these generic Christian organization. I can't think, Lifeway or something. And they posted something about, how Sunday school is so much better than small groups now. And I was like,
I saw
you
that,
guys are
yeah.
going to come full circle. And, you know, all
Yeah.
this soft they want. I mean, we've got the most, you know, wild and crazy visitors will come in that you think would connect with the rock and roll church. And they'll be like, we needed that, man. Oh, wow. You know, and now what's happening is these soft rock and roller, you know, skinny jean type churches. Now they're trying to monopolize, you know, whatever word I'm looking. They're trying to oh yeah, we're going to preach strong too, you know.
Right. They're almost,
you know, where I'm
right. They have the traditional,
like,
the contemporary service, and they have like the masculine service as well. Everyone,
yeah,
wears, you know, flannel and things like that. They have to go over the top.
Because they know
you're
people
exactly right.
That's why Donald Trump was voted in as president. People want, like him, love him, hate him, whatever.
Right.
He was telling it like it is. And we had the generation of, you know, of Obamas, and now we have the generation of Obama preachers.
Right. Yeah. You're exactly right.
Anyway.
You're right, man. I like
Where
it.
were we? Oh, yeah, our time. So let me tell you, I'm really excited. We have this is first announcing for anybody. I don't know if anybody's
exclusive. We got 10 or so on Facebook right now. Let's see.
Sweet.
Yeah, so let some folks know. You know, given
you tell me who it is.
This is breaking news. We have. Oh yeah, I can tell you some of them. Let's see here.
Whatever.
Well, you know, sometimes
is my wife
when
watching?
Let's see. I don't know.
She's not watching.
Let's see. Probably not. Probably not. She hears enough of you at home. Probably. Go ahead.
Let me tell you. Luke Flood is the bus director at North Valley. Do you know Luke Flood?
Yeah. I went
Young guy, just married. Luke and Cherith. He's coming for the first time. I'm going to preach. I'm excited.
Very
Humble
nice.
guy, spirit-filled guy. Justin Cooper. Never been here before. I've never met him in person.
He just took a pastorate, I think, didn't he?
He did, but he's coming.
Okay. I've never heard him, but I've heard he's a great preacher.
Yeah, I've never met him in my life, but here's the thing. I want to focus on preaching, man. Spirit-filled preaching. These guys are going to flat out preach. So Justin Cooper is coming, and I don't have this list in front of me, so I got to remember really quick. Hector Avila and his wife, all the wives are coming. Hector Avila is Kevin Wynn's son-in-law from down in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Church planter all over the South, all over the South America.
Yeah.
This guy, let me tell you. Well, you're just going to have to come to our time to hear the testimony and the stories. My brother-in-law, Sam Epley, flat out preach. He's a pastor in Murfreesboro, in a church in the suburbs of Murfreesboro. Jonathan Wells and his wife are coming. Are you familiar with Jonathan Wells?
Yes. Down at
Parkside Baptist Church in Mesquite.
Parkside. I was thinking Parkside. Yeah.
Phenomenal preacher. And again, spirit-filled, heart for the ministry, heart for God, but can get up and just preach, you know, and not play around, if you know what I mean. And then we have Abdel Judah, of course. He's been a staple. So how many? I need to look up the list and tell you how many I've given. There should be
Hector,
Luke, 6,
Justin,
and then
Sam. I think we're missing one.
I'm going to look up the list so I say it right. All right, so Justin Cooper, Luke Flood, Hector Avila, Sam Epley, Abdel Judah, Jonathan Wells, incredible lineup, right?
Okay.
And then Alvin Martinez family. I don't know if you can see that. The Alvin Martinez family. Brother Alvin's going to come back, and he hadn't been here in about 3 years. So Alvin's going to come and just light it up, singing.
The King is coming, 5 rows back, all over, man.
And those teenagers go crazy. They love him. So, and then, of course, Caleb and Katie Garraway will be singing. And though Caleb isn't, none of us in leadership of the conference preach one of the slots. They're always asking us to. Or our churches, all our teens are like, we want you to preach. But again, they hear us. So, and I have, Caleb preaches here. So we are able to then administrate the conference. Mike Griswold is our assistant pastor. Abe Kane is one of the conference administrators. And then myself and Caleb Garraway. So I think it's a great lineup. I hope people come. And if they know anything about those guys, it's solid. There's going to be preaching, great music. And we've got a lot of new churches registering, churches I had no idea. They've never been here before in 11 years, and they're coming. So that's encouraging.
That's great.
Okay, that's my little plug.
You said May 2nd and 3rd, is that right?
May 2nd and 3rd. It's basically like a little over a 24-hour conference. It starts Thursday night, and it ends Friday night. And big fireworks show. The teenagers just love it. Awesome set. Matter of fact, we're going to do some special things this year when the conference opens. I can't say.
Can't say anymore.
Epic is the word. Let me tell you, it's going to be epic.
I hate to be a downer. We have a God Bless America rally with Byron Fox scheduled 1, 2, 3, and 4. I shouldn't have promoted this, but we're far enough in distance. No. Yeah, well, I would say we came out. let's see, it would have been maybe 3-4 years ago we were able to come out, but it was a 12 or 13 hour bus ride on though it was well worth it. It was great preaching.
That's a long way.
It was a long way, but I would do it again. But we have
I understand
this awesome thing. But anyone that's not involved in the rally, please get over to it. We're excited about it.
When is that?
So it's May 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Is that Wednesday in your city, through Saturday. Or where is that?
So yeah, it's like 20 minutes south of us. Oh, wow. It's actually right beside the NFL Hall of Fame. Wow. There's this big Symphony Center.
So you're a sports fan. I watched a couple of yours. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
By the way, I was going to tell you this. I know our time's going on, so you're fine. Tell me when we need to end. But
sure.
There's a guy. Let me just tell you this briefly,
please,
for your sake. And I think this is a good review. I need to leave it on the podcast reviews, but
sure.
There's a guy who is Presbyterian. He's probably watching right now. So. Okay. But he didn't know I was going to say this, I don't think. I told him that we were going to do this because he was the one. Anyways, let me just tell you the story.
Yeah.
He was a Presbyterian, knew nothing of us in our circles at all. Okay. This is the only church that he's known, or pre all of this, that he would have known of Independent Baptist. Yeah. So he worked for the Cruz campaign back in the Cruz days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah. Yeah.
And met the Bontrager family, who are members of our church, at a big event that they sang that Ted Cruz did in Des Moines, a huge event. It was televised, all of that. And he was on the inner working, pretty high up in the campaign. Yeah. And so they invited him to our church, and he came and joined our church and has been just a huge blessing and is inner core of our church. Well, anyways, so I'm going somewhere with this. He came up to me several months ago, maybe a month and a half ago or a month ago. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Recently. And he said, "Do you know Micah McCurry?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean," but I was trying to think in his world, is this somebody in the political world? Because he's in the political world. And so I was like, I know Micah McCurry, who's an assistant pastor. And I said, matter of fact, we went to Israel together. He's like, yeah, I saw a video, like something about playing the
chauffeur.
Chauffeur, which that was fun there in Israel together. Yes. But, and I guess I forgot that you were a Jew. You're a Jew.
Half Jewish, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Jewish enough.
Sure.
Jewish.
So anyways, great times in Israel, by the way. I wish we could talk about that. But so he's like, yeah, I've been watching all these guys. And so it's been a blessing to him because it's introduced him to, in other words, I think his attitude was like, wow, this movement is bigger than I thought. Now, that's my words, not his, but that was my perception. If he's watching, that was my perception of what he was saying. Like, yeah, I've been watching this guy and he should have you on there. And I was like, oh, great. I didn't know anything about it. So then I went and watched some. I saw several, like Jay Reed. I loved his.
Oh, yeah.
Caleb Brereton, and I can't remember who all. So I watched it before you ever texted me. So when you texted me, I already knew about it. So I wanted to tell you that because if for him alone, I mean, I think he's watched most of them. I don't know. I didn't ask him how many. But and I was like, how do you even know Micah McCurry? And it's like Facebook.
Yeah, why would you know that guy?
No, I meant because
he's definitely not. I know what you said.
He didn't go to. He's never been to Bible college. He's never. This. Now he's well connected in the political world, but not in the Independent Baptist movement. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So you have I believe, introduced him to.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. And I'll be honest with you, that's one of the side goals. I've said this many times, and people will, I'm sure, get tired because I've said it probably 26 times now. This will be the 26th time.
That's crazy.
That's a lot. In actually, you said a couple of months ago. This actually started at the very end of January, so February, March, like 2 months ago. So yes, that was a lot. My wife would probably tell you it's a lot too. But I've said, if the viewer count was at 0, it wouldn't much matter to me because I get to talk music and all this different type of stuff, and it's awesome. But for the sake of, because I posted a quick poll on Instagram or something and asked, how many of these people, and this was, a couple weeks ago, how many of these people did you know? Over half or under half or something. And 2/3 of the people had no clue. It may have been even slightly over half is where I broke it. And and in my opinion, all the guys I've talked to are solid, straight down the line.
I love it.
And for a lot of people, I got to, being a military brat, and so all over the place, go to Golden State, go to Providence, now working here towards the East Coast. And so I've got to be exposed to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
That people that have only lived in Iowa would have no clue about. And that's nothing wrong with that. But, man, there's so many good guys.
You're exactly right. Exactly right. And, I know Caleb very well. He travels. He's gone a lot. But I know him well. But I clicked on that. It wasn't live. I clicked on like the repost of it a
Yeah.
couple days ago. When you asked me, I was like, oh man, I need to go like prepare. Like, what are we going to do? And then I realized, hey, we can talk and it's fun. And I love that
Right.
you're doing it this way, because even though we're preachers and stuff like this can get you in a box, and it's fun just to be able to fellowship. Just like
Absolutely.
I look at it, and I don't know how you're
Sure.
marketing it, but I look at it as like after a conference when you go out to Denny's or whatever and you just sit and talk. I love that.
Exactly.
And I love, because I grew up, I would get to go with my dad with all these great preachers, and this is exactly what they were doing. I mean, I could name the names of the greatest old time preachers. I mean, from all of them from way back in the day,
and probably some of your best memories
back in the day. They
exactly.
just fellowshipped and talked about their passions and everything else.
Yep.
So it is. I just challenge you, and I hope I don't come across flattering, but I do. I challenge you to do it, because very rarely do you find somebody using tech with the right spirit and the right. There's always an angle trying to take somebody farther to the left, or trying to vent their pet little doctrinal issue. Or
by the way, I do want to. I'm just kidding.
Let's do it. Trust me, I will go.
But no, so some of my best memories are exactly what you're talking about. We got to go, and I say get to as if it was some kind of privilege. Brother Wendell Runyon passed away. I think was it last year. But one of my best memories of that was sitting at a table at some fish and steak place with Keith Gomez, Dan Woodward, obviously my father-in-law, but Oliver Reza, and a bunch of these guys, just a murderers, Terry Angel.
Yes.
And I'm sitting right here. I'm asking Brother Angel, which of these steaks should I get? And so we're having that. I think, pat myself on the back as a smart young man, shut my mouth.
Yes.
That was just a word of advice. If you're sitting at a table with those guys, with 300, not to age them, but 300-400 years of combined ministry experience, because there's may have been 8, and then you have their wives, and they're talking at one end. I sat right in the middle, actually, had the wives, and hearing some of the funny stories from there. But man, and I remember had Ted Houston on here, and though just a quick reminder, pray for Ted Houston, anyone that's listening. Mm-hmm. But that was the first one I had where I consciously thought, ask a question and shut up and let the man of God speak. Because man, these guys have so much wisdom, but too often we have too many ideas and things we need to talk about.
Mm-hmm. We're all guilty of that. There's one thing that everybody in the ministry needs to do at one point in their life. They just have to do it. And this is going to be really weird and random.
Go ahead.
They need to have a meal with Keith Gomez. You know what I'm talking about. And I've told several people this, and I've told my wife, when you get a bunch of meat in front of that man, I'm telling you, and it's not just the food aspect of it.
Right.
You learn so much. A lot of people see him as this guy in the pulpit, and they're almost afraid of him, or they think, man, he's so harsh. I think it's the Louisiana, food culture, and he can just own a table. Do you know what I'm talking about? I had the opportunity to preach there last year. And honestly, if I never had the opportunity to ever go back there just to sit at the table after each service and just listen to him talk, I'm telling you, I laughed till I cried, and then just, his stories. And then you get him on the hunting stories. And, and I'm not really a hunter, so I just sit there and shut up, but, it's just, I don't know. And I thank God in the ministry being able to do things like that, to sit at those tables. And I, in OBC back in 2002, Wendell Runyon came down and took a bunch of us guys out to Brahms ice cream down there. And we got to sit around and just, listen. I wish I would have listened more now that,
Right.
You see those guys passing on, but, you think back to those words of wisdom and, so that's, I honestly, though we're young and we think that it's inconsequential, I hope you don't think that, but sometimes you can think, oh, we're just having a conversation.
Right.
We are to my son's generation what those guys were to us.
Yeah,
that's a sobering thought. That's a sobering thought.
Well, but you're exactly right. And man, to somebody's always watching, even, 27 years old, there's always people watching. And part of, again, one of the side goals of this was on purpose to prove that social media can be used as a good tool. There is some utility to it. Absolutely.
I love technology. I mean, I've got everything Apple in the world, but it has to be used wisely.
Right.
You don't buy a Mack truck and go jump in it and drive it down the road without training and knowing what you're doing, but then use it,
Right. No, so one of the last questions I asked, and I feel like we're getting close to them. Let me look here. We're getting close to right about an hour or so.
Is that what you normally do?
They normally end up, the longest one I've had, speaking of food, I did like a one-off. Wilson Leppert named it, instead of Micah McCurry Live, Micah McCurry Eats. I went out to a diner with a really good friend of mine.
I saw that. Go Wilson. Yeah. I hope he's watching.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think there's a bunch of guys I'm realizing next time I'm at their place, I need to take them out to eat, and we do one live because there is that personal. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you ever are in our area or I'm ever there, if you were going to ask me any question about hobbies or whatever, I was going to say food. I'm a foodie. You could ask Wilson Leppert. Matter of fact, he and I were just talking about a new restaurant in Des Moines he just went to. I'm kind of jealous. It's like Fogo de Chao, but
okay.
Anyways, I'm a foodie.
Well, then we'll have to go visit it at some point. Yeah, I think I'm trying to set up with Caleb Garraway. They're swinging through this area. We're going to go up to Cleveland, I think, and do an episode like that. Really, it's just an excuse to eat. I don't care if the camera's there or not.
If you come here, Wilson Leppert said he'll pay for it. So
it's perfect. That's great. Well,
since he coined the name, watching, but I'll tell him to go watch it.
Sounds good. So, one of the last questions I asked, though, is anything that you just need to get off your chest. Now, I say that jokingly because it can be carnal, just something funny or whatever, or someone you need to jokingly call out, but on the spiritual side as well. But anything to the world at large via the power of the interwebs, anything at all that you would like to say with this platform?
Well, I mean, there's so much that comes to my mind, and there's so many, like principles, living your life by principles, little sayings that my dad has given me throughout the years, and my mom, that I would love to take another hour and just share and talk about. Now, I've watched, you've talked guys about sports and all of that. I'm not big into sports or whatever. And I would love to go the non-spiritual route and share something funny at the end. But because of this platform, I want to share, I think, with what is the biggest thing on my heart that I fear that I would fall out of if I'm not careful. And I think it's very, very, very important. And I'll share this, and that would be the answer to your question. To kind of just get off my chest, or if I could have one conversation with people in the ministry. Now I'm in those parameters.
Sure.
Okay. And that is this: the devil doesn't care if he gets me or you or us in the ministry in the good flesh or the bad flesh. It's fine if he can just get us operating in the flesh. And I think far too often we talk about being spirit-filled and everything else, but far too often we can. Let me illustrate it in this way. The devil knows most likely that he's not going to get Micah McCurry, Pastor Micah McCurry, assistant pastor. He knows he's not going to get you when we hang up here to go out to the bar tonight or some club and just completely trash your marriage. Okay.
Sure.
I did have a funny story about your father-in-law too, but I'll have to save it.
Well, maybe for Micah McCurry Eats episode, whatever.
We'll do that.
We'll do that. Yeah.
Because we have another Dan Woodward's your father-in-law.
Yes.
We have a Dan Woodward in our church, and my dad called him in the middle of the night thinking it was our Dan Woodward. Anyways, another story. Let's do the next one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Or I'll text you the story. But anyways, here's the spiritual side of it. So if he cannot get you to go out tonight, and he knows he's not going to do that. Most of the pastors, they don't fall like that. It may seem that way, but they don't.
Sure.
If he cannot get me to go and drink in the evil flesh, he'll get me to preach in the good flesh. If he can't get a teenage boy in your church to go and curse and swear his parents, his pastor, and go out and listen to some terrible rock and roll music and go throw his life away like the prodigal son, he'll get him to go on teen sewing in the flesh, but the good flesh. If he can't get the musicians or the song leader, the choir director, to drink alcohol or do drugs or pornography or whatever in the evil flesh, he'll get you to lead that congregational in the good flesh. What is the good flesh? It's doing it in the power of our own might. It's doing it without prayer. And so several years ago, I went to a prayer seminar that A.J. Potter here, and Pastor A.J. Potter, a great pastor in Pleasantville, did, and it really changed my life. And they just placed the priority on prayer, just spirit-filled prayer. And I made a commitment to God into something, it's tough and it's a discipline that I am everything that I do. I don't care if it's, just going and making one hospital visit, leading a song, all the little miniature things and big and small. I'm going to take the time to pray for everything. That way it puts you in walking in the Spirit. And so, I don't know, you said get off your chest. I would just plead for my generation. Look, embrace the technology, smartly, all of that. Enjoy being first class and organized and not produced, but, in ministry, trying to grow using platforms and tools. We could talk about apps and stuff that I've learned and management tools and all of that. But I'm telling you, and I know it's redundant because probably everybody else on here has talked about the same thing, but it is so imperative that we're not doing what we're doing tonight just in the flesh, because the flesh profiteth nothing. And once he's got us in the good flesh, we're one step away from the tragic stories that we all have heard about. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so powerful. And you said, I mean, yes, all these interviews have been, ministry based and spiritual minded and all that. But man, just a reminder of the fundamentals. That's what it's all about. Yeah. And you're exactly right.
Well, and focusing on what I was getting at was calling out the good flesh for what it is. It isn't good, but I'm saying doing good in the flesh. Spiritual gifts up here, spirituality way down here. I can't see the screen, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's such a difference. And we look at the spiritual gifts, meaning preaching, singing, doing what we're doing right here. But I'm telling you, if I don't get up in the morning, and you're not going to know it, and nobody's going to know it, but if I don't get up in the morning and beg God, I still may get to go preach at some youth conference, and they're not going to know it because I'm preaching in the ministry. Yeah. But there will come a day.
Yep.
There will come a day.
And to that point, and like you said, the preachers, that make those huge mistakes or huge errors. It's a long time. Somebody, a great piano player of the past. It may have been Mozart. It may have been, I can't remember who it was. Said something to the effect of, if I don't practice piano one day, then I know. If I don't practice for 2 days, my friends know. If I don't practice for 3 days, the world knows. And it was a really interesting thing because now he was at the cutting edge of what is physically possible.
I'll look it up.
It may have been days, it may have been weeks. I believe it was days. But obviously you can extrapolate that because if Joseph Brown doesn't pray one day, he knows. Only
nobody else.
And and it may be 6 months until your assistant pastors and those really close to you, Caleb Garraway, knows. And it'll be 3 years. Yeah. And when you get your pictures taken walking out of a club, that's when the whole world will know.
Sure. Yeah. And that's what happens.
It's that simple. Yeah, exactly.
And I think we ought to walk in that fear of the Lord, that God, we are nothing without you. And again, it is so cliche. And I did hear a clip of Caleb, and he touched us on this, and he's carried this theme, and he's a spirit filled. I thank God for him. But even though we hear it and we hear it preached and everything else, it's got to just come down to the nitty gritty of doing what we, just walking with God. So,
amen. Well, this has been a lot of fun.
I've enjoyed it. I can't believe it passed by that fast. I was ready. Yeah. I've got like 400 pet issues to still talk about.
Amen. Well, we have plenty of episodes. We're only 26. We can just fill up the next week or two. That'll be great. What were we going to say?
Call me back sometime and we'll go part 2. Eats though. Eats.
Yes, I think we have to do it.
Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Have your people, because you hear about this out in there in the secular world. But us no-namers, we need to be able to do this, where you buy a plane ticket to O'Hare, and so do I, and we meet in one of those executive rooms, and we cater in like Giordano's or something.
Giordano's, yeah.
And we do get like 5 or 6 guys.
That would be,
and your viewers pay for it.
Yeah, see, as soon as you start money and we're Baptists, we have, but no, that's a great idea.
No, I'm joking. I'm totally joking, but no, it would be fun.
I have some Tupperware to sell you and some other different
essential oils.
Yes.
But anyways, no, here's the thing though. You should, and I'm just throwing it, and you don't have, you wouldn't need to include me, obviously. Please. But if there was some conference out there, or like, I don't know if you go to Capital Connections. I haven't been in a couple of years, but something where you could get a bunch of us guys in the room.
Yeah,
and put a microphone and cameras. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be awesome. And that I mean, like you said, having it keep going, because I have a murderer's row of the guys. I have Oliver Reza and Dan Martin.
Get those guys in the room.
Terry Angel and some of the others. Man. And now we wouldn't be doing much talking, but it would be so worth it.
Get them in the room.
Be so great.
Yeah, get them in the room and let us ask them questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to ask those guys questions.
I think that's a great idea, and we will have to set that up.
Thank you for what you're doing. It's exciting.
Absolutely, praise the Lord.
I saw your brother out at Golden State. He was running the camera and stuff.
Yes, he's getting married here soon, growing up, all that stuff. It's nuts. It's crazy. Hey, if you stick around for just a second, I'd appreciate it. I'll talk your ear off for just one more second here.
Sure.
This has been Micah McCurry Live number 26 with Pastor Joe Brown. If you missed part of it, go back and watch it. It'll be posted up on YouTube here shortly. It's on Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff, Twitch. So I appreciate so much you taking the time, and we'll let you get back to your wife here in just a moment. But stick around for just a second. Thank you so much, sir. And we will sign off. We have Marty Montgomery coming up here later on this week on Thursday, Church Planter, Illinois. We'll have a great time, but we will talk